presented through
Sure.
Mr. Minister.
Okay. Yeah.
We are here.
We're on here. Not bad.
Yes.
Good evening, viewers. We are here this evening, the former President and Prime Minister, Mr. Samuel Hinds, no stranger to any of you, and me here to talk to you about very grave developments in our country today. We will be taking calls a little bit later on, but we'd like to bring to you what happened today and then share with you your views on it and then hear from you about your views on that. PM?
Yes, thank you very much, Priya. Well, today we had Messrs. Ashley Singh, former Finance Minister, and Winston Brassington, former CEO of the NISIL, I think taking their responsibilities seriously and coming to Guyana, interrupting their new lives. I was surprised that they had come in, but they presented themselves of their own volition and in court today at Court 1, and we were very much taken aback by the huge bail that was required of them, and huge enough to pose a problem for its organization and having it presented in time to avoid them being kept, say, at least overnight in prison. But we were successful in getting that done, and so they were released on the bail of $6 million each, $2 million at each charge, which from the people there, lawyers and people around the court, seem to have been a very huge sum for this matter. But
so PM, let's just to tell our viewers, this stems from actions taken by these two gentlemen, Ashley Singh and Winston Brassington, in the course of their duty. That means while Ashley Singh was Minister of Finance, performing diligently and excellently, we'll talk about that in a minute, and Winston Brassington and the chair of NISIL, our privatization unit, and Winston Brassington was the head of that body. They executed certain cabinet decisions to sell properties, to sell land in Guyana to persons who had bid for that land at the prices that were best at the time. So all they were doing was carrying out a cabinet decision, and they were charged for it. Now let's talk about those pieces of land. Each piece of land went up for public bid. That means there was a notice put in the newspapers and in various other public documents and published for the world to see that said, hear ye, hear ye. Anyone who is interested in this piece of land and can come forward with the best price for it, we would be happy to sell it to you, because Guyana is developing, it's on the go. We'd like to see various empty plots developed for housing or facilities that would give our people a better quality of life. In one of those cases, what happened is one person had bid for the land at a particular price. He couldn't, that is the land that is, presently if you drive on the East Coast, you'll see a big cinema complex going up there. He couldn't pay that price that he had bid, and so it was cancelled. As a result of which the next person got it. We, as a government, we changed our mind about selling the whole piece of land, because by then we saw the scope for medical tourism and the need to put down a very modern state-of-the-art hospital that our people could benefit from, and that people in the Caribbean wider field would want to come and benefit from and pay us for, and so on. So part of that land was kept for that hospital, the specialty hospital, which this government has scrapped, and part of it was sold to this cinema people called Skady. Now that is one of the lands that was sold, and the charge against Ashley Singh and Winston Brassington is that they didn't sell it with a valuation, as a result of which they're reckless. Those are the words used, and that recklessness leads to them having misconducted themselves in public office. We are Ashley Singh and Winston Brassington, and everybody with an ounce of brain who wants to see what's good for Guyana is defending. We are defending those charges. First of all, not getting a valuation does not amount to misconduct in public office. Secondly, I want to bring to your attention forcefully that there is no allegation, even by this wicked government, there is no allegation that these gentlemen have stolen the money. There's no allegation that they sold it for a price that is undervalued and they took the rest of the money and pocketed it in their own bank account, or they built a fancy, nothing. There's no allegation like that. The only allegation made by the government itself is that they sold it without a valuation. Now, I just told you they went to, as a country, we went to public bid, and the person who bid the highest got that land. Now, Winston Brassington was making the point that we've done that in a letter I saw in the newspapers recently,
yes,
that we have done that for so many different businesses, because in developing, Guyana wasn't, I mean, the government was only thinking about who we could get the most money from at that point. But what would be a good project? What do our people need? For example, what's going down there right now is a cinema that's going to be house a lot of franchises and other a multiplex that's going to have both clothing and food and so on. Franchise that we see across the world. It is supposed to mirror one that is in Trinidad. That is, Movie Town in Trinidad is one of the best in the Caribbean. In fact, ours might actually be better when we're finished with it.
Guyanese heritage.
Guyanese heritage. But the other thing is, so what Winston was pointing out is that when we sold GBTI, it was sold for significantly below what the valuation actually said. But look at the investment made and the development made to our country for selling that piece of land.
Selling on bid, all these things.
Well, yes, but that one specifically, GBTI, for example, had the valuation came in at much more than we sold for.
Yes.
We sold it to GBTI as a government, and GBTI put up this huge structure, have hired people, are serving this nation, ordinary people who want loans, as well as big businessmen and women, rice farmers and store owners and so on. And has changed the landscape of that part, has changed the landscape of banking in this country. So it's not a single-minded thing that caused the cabinet to make these decisions, but at the end of the day, that was a cabinet decision that was made by all of us sitting there with the best information that we had, with a view to developing this country in a scheme that we had said we wanted to develop. So that's why these two gentlemen were charged for 3 of those things. The charges that they just to cover this background so that you know, the charges carry a maximum sentence in this country of 1 year. They were never served on Ashley Singh and Winston Brassington, so they never got personally served with these summonses. In fact, there was no attempt made by Sohu to serve these on these gentlemen until yesterday. Yesterday is the first time they tried to serve it, and this morning these guys were in the country. This afternoon they were in court of their own volition. So we were very, very surprised at the very high bail placed on, which is really a fetter to their freedom. Bail in Guyana, just to cover the background of the legal thing, is based on, and in fact anywhere, not on whims and fancies, but it's based on whether you think this person is a flight risk, you think, here it is, you think that this offense is very prevalent, or you think they'll interfere with witnesses. Now let's take number one. Number one, they came to Guyana to answer their charges without being served, without being told formally by the court system that they have these charges against them. So they're not a flight risk. 2, the offense is not prevalent. This is the first time in the history of Guyana, and quite possibly in the history of many countries in this part of the Commonwealth, that these charges are being laid. They're just very, very rare. Nothing on our statute books that could give rise to this kind of thing. So they've relied on a very old common law. It's an offense against common law. And 3, it is unlikely that they could interfere with any of the witnesses. These witnesses, whoever they may be, are mostly documented and still with the government system. So there is no reason to think, and in fact, At no point today did the prosecution advance anything to suggest that he thought they were flight risks, or that they would interfere with witnesses, or that they needed such an incredibly high bail. So that is the background of what happened today, and that's why we say it is a travesty, because every single day, and we will talk more about that, this government in office is doing things that are actually unlawful, things that are actually immoral and wrong. These guys did nothing wrong here.
That's quite a good presentation, Priya. And I feel strongly that in pursuing and persecuting Ashley and Winston, as for the PPPC as a whole, I think that growth and development of our country is put under attack. In fact, there was a letter in some media saying these charges attack what people do generally to arrange for growth and development of countries. Indeed, Messrs. Maurice Odell, Horace James, and Mr. Heath London, I think, they are doing things that are much more risky and hazardous for the state or the country than anything that we did that was done under the cabinet's approval and direction during the time that the PPPC was in office. I think that persons in the area of growth and development of our country would be extremely constrained, and it would be very difficult for them to make arrangements, effective arrangements for growth and development of our country. We should bear in mind that these three properties that are the subject of these charges are all in that development area of Lillian-Dal, Pattinson, an area which also includes the recently renamed Arthur Chung Conference Center, the Aquatic Center, the CARICOM headquarters, which was promised, I think, since 1973 by the president at the time, Mr. Forbes Burnham. And after so many years, we were able to put in place this national commitment, the commitment of our country. And then there's the movie town. You know also that area, if you think about it, it also includes the Giffland Mall. And from the records, Giffland Mall was sold subsequently to these three and sold at a lower unit price. And don't get me wrong, I'm all for Giffland Mall.
Look at what it does for so many people.
I visited on invitation, I visited Giffland Mall at least twice during its long extended period of construction. And what does one think? I cannot resist thinking that because the Giffland Mall is so popular and so much accepted by the Guyanese, they don't list it as one of the problem areas. But it is no less a problem area than any of the three. If we take it that their charges for these three properties is seen by them as being a problem, then Giffland Mall is just as much a problem. But they would be going against our people, the people of the country. So I could only see political reason, that sort of political reason, why they have not moved against Giffland Mall. But I very much recall being at Cabinet as we discussed at some time, discussed a new area of focus for development of our country on the outskirts of Georgetown, where land was available. And I recall President at the time, Bharat Jagdeo, going through and having the discussions. You know that one or two other hotels were to be put up there, and I think contracts were entered into for those. So it was a development area, an area for development. And it must be seen in that background. And what was done for these three properties was very consistent with what was being done for all the properties and for the development of the area. You know, before, one must think about it before that this area, undeveloped area, what would have been the value? Very little or nothing. It is as things get put in that the value, there is a value and there is a rise in the price of the properties there generally. So growth and development of our country are under attack. These charges bring growth and development. The practices and principles of arranging for growth and development come under attack.
Well, two things, PM. I would think two things come under attack. Growth and development, as you so eloquently pointed out, but also the involvement of young people. I don't know when Ashley Singh joined the cabinet, he was 33 years old. And it was a 33-year-old Guyana scholar, PhD, Dr. Ashley Singh, who was extremely articulate and took the country by storm. Guyana fell in love with his debating in the National Assembly and his articulating various points and so on. And it was under Ashley that we had 8 years of consecutive growth, something this country, economic growth, this country had not seen since, for decades before. We had come close to it sometime around the early 90s, and then we had the slow fire phase, and we had lost it. And so Ashley brought that out. It was under Ashley that a whole list of developmental things happened, and Winston. And these guys didn't hide it. We didn't hide it from the nation. It was Ashley and Winston and that board at NISIL who put up development and investment in tables, privatization in tables. This is a published document, publicly available to anyone on the World Wide Web and to everyone else. It wasn't hidden, it was right there. Which young person, I mean, the difference is now you have a bunch of octogenarians serving, which is fine. We're not saying that people shouldn't enjoy their golden years in public office, but what we don't have a single 33-year-old in the cabinet. None. And I would hesitate to think that anyone looking on now who's 30, when I went to the cabinet, I was just turned 30, 33, 35, who are vibrant and have a lot of energy and so on, would want to go and put their efforts into public service that could result in these kinds of vindictive, nasty, libelous charges. And that is, for me, one of the most dangerous things, because what you will get is what we have now, left, to use common parlance. You can't get any other job anywhere else, you can't do anything else, so you end up in the cabinet serving a whole nation, trying to build a nation. And the second thing is contrasting our development policy. You saw what we had. We said our goal was to give every family a house lot and the ability to build a home on that lot, whether by loans or giving bricks to suppliers to bring in things cheaper and sell things for cheaper. So we had given out over 100,000 house lots in set of years under the PPP. I don't know if 12 have been given out in the last 3 years. I certainly know that it has not reached 1,000. And I challenge the government to come at us. Give us your numbers. Tell us how much you have distributed in the last 3 years. There is no development. We could talk about, we had entered a contract for the building of a hotel and it got scrapped. But that contract was entered in a scheme of development where you see something like Giftland being built by private owners, but facilitated by the government and its development plan. Contrast that with what we have now. Is there anything in the newspapers that suggests there's going to be big investment in this country that will help to keep dollars moving, as well as bring a higher quality of life to the people? There's nothing there, and I am saying, PM, this is why we have to have this circus. People are suffering. People are waking up in the mornings, it's blackout. They're going to bed at night and begging on social media and elsewhere, please put the lights on. People are unable to put 3 meals on their children's plates. People are unable to send their children to school in many of the villages and communities where there's sugar workers, who primarily the sugar workers reside, have been, these 5,000 persons have lost their jobs. Regular public servants are finding it a lot harder to enjoy some of the things that we used to take for granted. And so to distract persons from that, you think parading Ashley Singh and Winston Brassington through the court is going to somehow or the other make these people forget that they have a hard life under you and that you haven't kept your promises as a government. That is what I think the government is trying to do. And it is disgusting, it is reprehensible, and we must resist it. It is our duty as a people. It is our duty, not only as leaders of the PPP and the PPP, it is our duty as a people to resist this. As I was saying to you today, I really thought these days of, a country has to grow, it has to move. And so Cherry and you and other people got locked up for being politicians and for supporting a political party. Haven't we moved on from that? We have paid that debt. That wickedness of the PNC passed. Hopefully you all did it. By now it's our turn. And I don't mean me pray, I mean our country's turn, our people's turn to come and take the next step, develop, move, stand on the shoulders of those who were jailed before, of those who went through this kind of political harassment before, stand on the shoulders of that experience of our country and grow from there and move from there. What we had instead was Father Dark being killed, Rodney being killed, people being bombed, rights being taken away, our country bankrupt, people getting wiped out, migration in droves, and then we had people becoming, there was a beautiful set of growth after many challenges and through many struggles. And now instead of us building on that, so that Guyana and her people, black, white, yellow, Indian, black, Hindu, Christian, middle class, rich, whoever, could grow and be better, we now have this, the finance minister himself has said, the economy is declining. There's no growth, nobody's investing, we're not performing the way we're supposed to perform. Our foreign reserves are down by enormous figures, startling figures, our gold reserves. Everything is just plummeting, people are losing jobs, people are losing hope, we have domestic violence that's happening like it's no, there's no tomorrow, we have people killing themselves. It is a bad place to be, and so I think the government believes that to start charging people will distract the whole nation from that, but it won't.
If we think of these charges coming after 3 years and some 50 or so forensic audits, and every other day you're hearing about PPPC people are so corrupted they will all be charged. What do you think with these 3 frivolous charges, as our leader of the opposition has properly described them? Really speaking, the corruption charges were false, so they were just purely propaganda. It's starting to show. And so I think they have been pushing to get these charges in place. And as you said, to parade former Minister of Finance and former CEO. But I say again, those people who are in those same jobs and who are doing things now, who are being required to do things now that are even more risky and more hazardous and more challengeable than anything we did, they should take note and be concerned. Not for us, but for the same very people who they serve and who are persecuting as distinct from prosecuting. As additional to the prosecution, it is persecution of Ashley Singh and Winston Brassington, and they're being persecuted on behalf of the cabinet of which I had the honor to serve for so many years.
Yeah. Well, more charges will come, PM. I suspect strongly as we go closer to the local government elections, as we go closer to the national elections, you'll start seeing the circus is going to have more clowns. They want to add more entertainment to the people, mostly to distract you. But let's come back to what you were mentioning. Throughout our time in office and on the campaign trail of 2015, what was the government hammering? The now
The
government,
opposition,
when they were in
yes.
opposition, the APNU, they had said, PPP was corrupt, they're thieving all this money, they're, you know, we were just such this bad set of people. When they came into office, look at the charges they're bringing. Nobody has brought a charge yet to say you've taken this money and put it in your account, or you bought a house with it, or you bought a car with it. They haven't been able to do that because it didn't happen. I'm not saying that across the country there wouldn't have been corruption, like there is in every country with amongst different service persons. But I'm saying the massive corruption from the government, the cabinet members that they were talking about, did not happen. And so what we saw were charges on the GRDB matter. The GRDB persons who were charged are board members. There were 7 out of, I think, 15 board members. And they were charged for not putting an entry. They write down something in the ledger in the book. They didn't put an entry in the ledger. They charged directors of a board. Now that's not their function. The directors don't want to enter anything into a ledger. The directors make broad policy decisions, look at broad management issues. The accounting officer does that. Now, they also did not charge all 15. They charged the persons who they thought were close to the PPP. And some of them, I mean, at this stage in 2018 Guyana and 2018 in the world, you're being persecuted for freedom of association, for associating with a political party of your choice. So who did they charge? They charged Dharam Hall, he's a PPP MP. They charged Dharam Kumar Siraj, he's a PPP MP. They charged Prema Romana, she is the daughter of an activist, a strong activist of the PPP. Just persons they believed were close to the PPP. And it is disgusting, it is so blatant, it is discriminatory, and it is using broad over, this is what we can do. We have the power to do it, and we will do it. No regard for people's freedoms and so on. And again, today with Ashley, they didn't say they stole. They said you didn't sell according to a price that was on evaluation, or you didn't get a valuation, without regard for the fact that they went to public bid and got the highest bid for that property in a scheme of development. So we haven't had any real charges, and I think that just goes to show that there was all of this was a lot of hot air. Now,
in fact, I'm thinking, since they won largely on the basis of the corruption charges, if there were any gentlemen or gentlewomen amongst them, they should resign and leave office, because this frivolous charge is all that they can come forward with up to this time. After 3 years of forensic audits, and I presume thinking about it and talk and discussing it almost every day, all they can come up with is these 3 frivolous charges against the finance minister, the former finance minister.
Well, PM, I really believe more charges will come against us who served in the cabinet, because that is what they have to do to be able to say that they were telling the truth all along.
But there will be continue this frivolous nature.
Right, they will be along this frivolous kind of nature. We have to look though at what is happening now. 2 weeks or so ago, Anil Nandlal, our former AG and Minister of Legal Affairs, who is an attorney at law of some prominence, filed charges. I was the lawyer who assisted other MPs to file charges against present ministers of government. And some of those, if we were just to briefly look at it, one of the charges he filed was the same thing, misconduct in public office. But here, what the circumstances were there. A house that was not even finished, incomplete house, was rented to a PNC supporter, publicly known supporter, at a rental sum of $14 million a month. Rented from the government. So they're renting it from the man. The government is paying this man $14 million a month for what is essentially a bottom house. Well, we know in Guyana is a bottom house, an incomplete house in Lombard Street somewhere. That person is also
receiving advance.
He received an advance. He continues to receive a rent. Now, the cabinet ministers, Moses Nagamutu, the prime minister, many say he's a rubber stamp, he does nothing, but in this case, he actually sat on a committee with Raphael Trotman and I believe one other person, I don't remember who it is. And they themselves came up with having reviewed all the documents, said that this was not a just and true contract. It was not something that Guyana could benefit from. It should be terminated, and if he doesn't want to terminate it, we should put to him that he should lower his fees and whatever. And if he didn't want to do that, it should be terminated. That was over a year ago. That has still not been done. So they still didn't take any advice from that AFC said.
So the injury to the country continues.
So the injury to the country continues. Now, he is a PNC supporter, but hear this. He's also collecting money from the government, and he's paying rent to rent the place that a cabinet minister has known connections to, the Sidewalk Cafe. Owned, as far as everybody knows, whether it's in a company or wherever, by a cabinet minister. So he's collecting government money from the state that he should not be collecting, illegal contract, and he's paying to her and those their operation there to rent premises from them. What is more corrupt than that? What is more corrupt than that? And when through the parliament, we went to visit, parliamentarians went to visit that bond, they found out that nothing was being stored in the bond. There were condoms and other lubricants and whatever, but nothing in terms of medication and so on was being stored in the bond. And in fact, I believe there was an apology and so on, and persons, there is someone actually before the Privileges Committee, Minister Norton.
Well, if they moved Minister Norton at the time, I guess one can read in it some amount of they thought that something was done wrong. But if that was so, then they should have insisted that the contract, the lease, be ended.
Yes. But PM, that's what I'm saying. That is one of the charges that was brought by a private criminal charge.
Yes.
That was one of the charges that was brought. So if you're talking corruption, that's real corruption. That's money moving, going into somebody's pocket and might be moving around the places I just pointed out. So it is very important that when we talk about what's actually happening, and when those charges were filed, if the government was so confident that they had done nothing wrong, but like you said, they themselves practically demoted the man for doing that. If they were confident that they were doing nothing wrong, why did they get the DPP to null cross those charges? Go and face the court, just like Ashley Singh and Winston Brassington have done today. And so it's really a tragic day in the country, because we're seeing what we were promised, which is this authoritarianism rising and rising and rising, and you're seeing more evidence of the police state, and you're seeing more things that could really cause us to slip further. I mean, we know that economically we have really gone to a point that we haven't been in many years, a couple of decades in the country, but we're bringing this to your attention because we're saying to you that this is not a PPP fight alone. It's not a leaders in the PPP fight. It's all of us, because someday this kind of thing will touch you in some way or the other. And so stand with us as we resist it. Stand with us as we resist it, and we will stand with you and make sure this does not become the norm for Guyana again. We had crawled out of this kind of black hole where this is what we were known for. When we talk to my colleagues my age at law school in the Caribbean, knew us for being rigged elections and just all the things that were bad. Now people want, then we moved to a place where you were hearing about our LCDS, and we become popular for and known for positive things, good things, as an investment destination, as a possible tourism destination. Now we've gone back to being a place where you could get locked up if you come and invest in the wrong climate, where a businessman's name might be dragged through the mud because they bought a piece of land that was being sold by the government. That's where we've gone back to, and it is unhealthy, and it just boggles my mind that this is the environment the government is creating. PM, when we were in office, I remember we took grave efforts to make sure that the country was stable, because it was easier to build this country, to develop in a stable country. So some decisions that could have caused instability, we held back on. We were, I'm not seeing that here, and I'm wondering if they know that they can't do much in terms of development and growth. And so you might as well break everything up and cause some confusion and distract people, because even if we had a calm place, we cannot develop, we can't grow, we can't attract investments, we can't build entire housing schemes, we can't do that. So let's distract everybody by charging some people.
Yes, Priya. I wonder whether it's time for us to give the audience out there so an opportunity to call in. We did
Yes,
say that we'd have
please,
a
I
call
think the
in.
number's
How
on
is
the
it done?
screen. So the number's on the screen, and if someone wants to call through, they will, and then we'll just take the call here. So please, we'd like to hear from you, and we'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. In the meanwhile, what we can do is tell you a little bit about, for me, something that was just, I don't even know, it just left such a terrible taste. Yes. Hello? 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 I think I lost that call. After Ashley Singh had gone to, yes, press it PM, I think you might get that call.
Hello?
Hi, good evening.
Good evening, good evening.
Rhea?
Good evening. I'm good.
I'd just like to point out that it's easier to manipulate an autocratic government because, as the whole country knows by now, there's a bigger ruler in place, the Americans, the British, the Canadians, who this present government has sold our sovereignty over to. And what to say about a piece of land? They have given over the whole country for some people who are controlling the strings of Guyana. And the public needs to know and look at the big picture of what's taking place. And for these people who are manipulators of the world scene, it's easier to control a dictator. And they have been doing this all over the rest of the world. So thank you very much for accepting my opinion. Have a good evening.
Well, thank you for calling. Thank you very much, caller, for calling. We like to hear from people, and that is certainly a view that has been.
There's that view there, but it's not the view that we hold. Yes, in the 1950s and 60s, in the times of the Cold War, the Soviet Union, and so on, the records show that the countries in the West preferred the PNC and Mr. Burnham, and they only preferred them maybe because they could have, they felt more comfortable about controlling them. But I think that the world is today different in many ways, and even though the big countries may have their preferences, I think things are much more variable. And I think that generally we don't hold the view that the ABC countries, as it is said, that they have any preference at this time for this current coalition government. If they did, they would be, I would think they should be embarrassed by what has been happening since May 2050. And there is no world situation now that gives Guyana the kind of position that existed in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. So I know many people are concerned about it because this has been our history, but I think that it's not quite the same thing these days.
Yeah. But the thing is, though, that it's a different world. I think it's a different world. Different forms of media has opened the world in a different way that didn't exist before. And so at this stage, I think we would have to, we have not, hello?
Hello,
Okay,
I'm not
hello.
very good at it.
No, you're right. But caller, if you're calling, I think there's something with the feedback. You need. I don't know about it, but I hear people saying that a lot on TV. You need to turn your TV down,
Yes.
so that there's no feedback in the studio. But I was saying today, the pictures that are being promoted by the government, and these charges are.
Hello.
You have to wait till some. There you go.
Hello, someone's on the line.
Yes, good evening to you.
Good evening. Good evening.
Good evening.
No, I'm neutral. First and foremost, may I say that it was rather disgraceful to put handcuffs on those who
Well, thank you, caller, for calling. So let's talk a little. Hello.
Yeah.
Thank you for calling. So there are many ways you can sell land. You can go and have an evaluation done, and
But
then just
the important thing, sorry to butt in, is that different evaluators could give you a whole range of prices. Some people focus on the historical past, some people focus on the future. Most important thing is the application and the income stream that would come forward. I can tell you that when we were working at privatizing the electricity company GPL, and we had a big set of rows going with different people, and at one time the international group, I think one of the 5 or 7 companies, accounting firms, the gentleman said, look, if you all keep too much noise here, Carla, instead of evaluating at plus 15 million, I'm going to do it at minus 15 million. All I'm going to say now is that all those old wires you have up there, they should be dumped properly. All the oils in your transformer should be dumped. I could say all of that, and if I said all of that, you're going to be going in the negative. So estimates are what they are, estimates, and basically you put more relevance often into what the market is offering, because
right. So
that
PM,
is the main thing.
Two
market
things.
offer.
Yeah, and I want to make a very important legal point. There's nothing that says you have to get evaluated. So there's no law that was breached for not getting evaluation. But I think what I heard in the caller's tone is, why didn't we do the proper thing? Why wasn't propriety followed? So let me tell you what evaluation is for. It's to determine the market value of the land. That's really why you do evaluation, to make sure you don't sell it for $1 when it was actually worth $50. How do you determine market value? Best, you go to the public and you say, anybody who's interested in bidding for this land, we would like to sell it. So even if somebody had valued the land, let's say at $300 million, and the highest bid you get is 150, are you not going to sell it when you don't? We had moved as a country. We didn't want swamplands there anymore. We wanted to see development and buildings and so on. So what we wanted to do was sell it at the highest price we could get. And the way to determine that is to go publicly. We didn't call a man and say, hey, come best friend, come my cousin, come my brother, let me send this land to you. We said, here, any man in Guyana, any woman in Guyana, anybody outside Guyana, you want to buy this land, tell us your best price. We're going to look at all you, see which one of you could best, has made the best offer, has the best development plan perhaps, because sometimes it's not just about an offer, it's about what is in the area and what kind of thing we want to see in the area. Come forward and give us that figure. So to the caller who just called, there was a valuation for one of the lands. There was a valuation, like I said, let's take the GBTI opposite Pegasus. In that case, there was a valuation. They haven't charged in relation to that land, but in that case, there was a valuation, and the valuation put up a figure that would have been far more, that was far more than GBTI paid. But at the end of the day, the value that GBTI gave to the building and now to the nation by having that big headquarters there, it may work out better for us. And that's what I'm saying. It's not always, valuations are generally to determine market price. If you could determine the market price by doing something else, such as, for example, because valuations cost too.
Yes.
To put a building, a piece of land out to bid, it doesn't cost us anything. To get a valuation, we might have to pay $15, $16, $17 million, $20, $30 million to get the valuation for the land in the first place. So sometimes, this government would do it, put out a property to be bid for by members of the public, Guyanese people, non-Guyanese, without a valuation. It's not a crime. And the way you know it's not a crime is they haven't charged in relation to all the properties that were sold. Listen, every single house lot in this country that people are enjoying. If you are a viewer here tonight and you are living in a home where you got the house lot from the government, or your mother had gotten it from the government, you went to the bank, you got a loan, we didn't go and get market value for that, because what we knew we wanted to do was to give Guyanese men and women the dignity of owning their own homes, and the capital that would bring. When you own a home, you could go mortgage it, get collateral. It's collateral now for you. You have property you could pass on to your children. So you didn't get that at market value. You didn't go for a valuation, value it and say, well, this acre is valued at 20 million. So if we're dividing this acre into 5 lots, everybody's going to pay $4 million. We said, we're going to take a small sum to go towards the various things that need to be done, and much of this will be subsidized by the government's programs. So it's different programs that you had. That particular piece of area there, it was vacant, it was swampy, it's low, and I think we wanted to see a big set of development going along there, which is why we had there the special.
And we are achieving it. If you look at that area between Liliendal and Pattinson and the other place, you could see the development taking place. Yes, the 2 hotels have not been realized as yet that were planned for there. But let's get on.
5 minutes. Yeah, so we have 5 minutes more. Maybe we can take one more.
We want to get on with growth and development, and you've seen us perform over some years. Harvest back.
Yeah. And not only that, I'd say to the government, you have a couple of years left. Let's assume you do. Show the Guyanese people what you could do. You went on the campaign trail. You said you can do better. You said you can govern better. You said you can do better in housing. You said you could do better in education. You said you could do better in healthcare. You said you had a plan for the sugar workers. You'd give them 20% as an increase on their salary. You said you'd give the public service 50% as an increase on their salary. You made marvelous promises to the teachers.
And rice prices.
Rice prices would be $9,000 back. None of that has happened. And you haven't come to them and say, okay, maybe we dreamt too big, but so we can't give you what we promised. But here's what we're giving you instead. They haven't done that. What they've done instead is come to you and said, we can't give you what we promised, but here's what we can give you. We're taking your job instead, which is what they did to the sugar workers. We're not giving out this housing project that the PPP used to run on. We're not doing that anymore. Education, we're not really sure where that is. The government itself has changed ministers and demoted ministers and removed ministers and keep apologizing for their failure to perform. There was a COI done for the Ministry of Education a few years ago. This country, you have paid for it. We have paid for it already. We cannot yet see it or what the results were. We had an education bill laid in the National Assembly. We laid it. I laid it there. Nothing is being done with that. You see nothing happening in that ministry. In the area of health, what we hear about all the time, in fact, the AFC just issued a statement about how perturbed they are about the shortage of medicine in the country. And they blame the health workers or something for it. All across the country, we can't get aspirin and paracetamol across the country, let alone things like insulin, diabetes medication for the chronic illnesses, blood pressure medication, and so on. Rice has been totally neglected. The people in the Region 5 area will tell you that they have problems with wondering whether they should even replant next crop because small things like dams being regraded and so on, that's not happening. So it's now a nightmare to get in and out of your fields. Much more cost to the rice farmer. Sugar workers, well, that's been a national disaster. We've fired 5,000 people. We don't care how their children go to school. We don't care how they will eat. I'm saying we very loosely in terms of the government. So instead of giving you the things they promised, they have taken away from you. They're unable to replace it with anything else. And so let's call on them to actually earn their keep. What they have done is raise their salaries to over $1 million. Their perks are far more than any other cabinet in the history of this country has ever enjoyed. And the arrogance with which they perform their duties, refuse to answer questions. None of the bills go to select committee anymore for scrutiny by the opposition and the people of this country. It's just, the president doesn't give interviews. The president doesn't hold press conferences. The media, the fourth estate, you can't ask him questions. He hides from you, even as he takes your money and spends it on all this extra security and so on. So really, we have gone from a place of many freedoms to little by little, our freedoms are being taken. Our ability to earn the economic power in individual homes, it's getting very, very bad.
And in your discussions about all of those many areas where things are now much more difficult than they were before 2015, we should add to the mining, particularly the small and medium scale Guyanese miners, and the various positions that were taken by this coalition government. For example, our position of paying just, I think, 2% to cover company tax or corporate business tax, business income tax. They insisted initially that all of the miners, all of the small and medium scale miners should present books of all their purchases and all their costs and all their sales, gold, and so on. You know, when you think of 2,000 to 3,000 small people of various sizes having to do all of this big bookkeeping and accounting, I've heard that they have retracted, they've gone back to where things were before. And that area, I know the miners call me and they say it's an utter confusion, and the gold board, and it's utter confusion in there now. But I think most of all, I was put back by their change from our program before of zero rating, of having the VAT not applied to items that the lower income earning people would purchase. So if you bought dried china, you didn't pay VAT. If you bought china in the tins in the supermarket, you paid VAT, because it's a reasonable assumption that you have more money to buy that one rather than the other one. That took a lot of money out of low income people's pockets. I don't think they have the same grasp of our people who are low earners. I think through their program of cutting down on the age of vehicles that could have been brought in, including trucks and so on, where I think on the presentation of the leader of the opposition, that was reversed, I think, even at the time that it was being introduced. You know, there is no real thought of how things get done, how the country is run, how the people make a living. There's no real thought of that. We're being managed by some maybe ideas of the 1950s and 1960s of what is good and how things should be. We resisted a lot of that because, take for example, this same kind of our television stations. The prevailing idea at the time as we came in is that you'd have a few stations like mini BBC, but we opened the door. We opened the door to everyone for quite some period. We had up to 17, 18, I think, TV stations. We opened the door so that people could, who were interested, could try their hand.
So our kind hosts are indicating to us that we are
Yes.
out of time. We thank you very much for being with us here tonight, PM. It's always a pleasure to appear with you. I
It was good
thank
to be
you
with you.
again
Priya.
for all your service that you have given to this nation. It is not something we can truly say thanks for. Please know that your efforts, along with the colleagues who serve with you, will touch many, many lives to come. We ask you to help us to resist authoritarianism. You hold our hands while we do it, we'll hold your hands, and together we can overcome this authoritarian government.
Thank you.
And to our Facebook friends, thank you very much for being with us here tonight.
We didn't get too many calls. We didn't thinking that he might